What's up, everybody? Got a new video to go into today. Very excited about it. I'm gonna actually be covering something that's not simply just scaling like a simple one character, two characters. It's something that I love talking about is actual like concept, something that can be applied across verse to verse and actually means a lot of things. It means a lot of for like the versus community and everything. It's much more than simply here's how strong one person is. I love this stuff. Now, what's really special about this is I have someone here who's been a part of my community, and it is the Shush. And
Um, it's a very weird name, but I am here, surprisingly.
I've never been against, collabing with people, and it's pretty cool. I think it's awesome being able to talk with people within your own community and things. It should be a lot of fun. And so I'm sure you
Yeah,
can tell.
rather than just like debating.
I'm fine with debates too, but yeah, it's actually with people in your own community. This is really cool. The last one was also really cool. Really love this stuff, so it's a lot of fun. But if you couldn't tell by the title, then what we're talking about today is what it means to be universal, because this is a term thrown out all the time. In fact, I don't want to hog all the talking time here. Shush, please go for it. What?
Okay, so basically, we discussed this like beforehand, but there's like a lot of terms you can use to discuss, like what you would call a universal character. Because there's a definition of versus media destroying something that would fit the qualification of a universe, or something with like more than like a few celestial bodies. But the main problem we have with that definition is like if you're universal under that qualification, it doesn't mean you're stronger than somebody that's like galaxy level if you're destroying like a planet-sized universe.
Yeah. And you might be thinking like planet-sized universe. How does that even make sense? It's like the thing is people try really, really hard to get characters as strong as they possibly can. Kind of ironic coming back from like the let's highball things as much as possible. This is a pretty strong pushback on ideas like that. But you have to take into consideration there's a bunch of different universes that aren't universal. If even just the term like something like parallel universes. Well, if there's parallel universes and people want to argue like that's the same size, which isn't even always the case, then you can have also
Parallel doesn't have to be the same size. You can have two lines. One line's like a different size than the other, but they're not. But they're still parallel because they're never gonna meet, and they're opposite direction. So
exactly. I mean, parallel universes can be the same size, but that doesn't necessitate that they actually are. They oftentimes can be used just in the way we might use perpendicular, parallel, right? But if we are going to argue that like a parallel universe can exist and they can be the same size as in they can be, well then you're necessitate like therefore there has to be of course universes that aren't the same size. Such as, I mean, what is it? Pocket dimensions you can say are people will call universes sometimes. But you even have like Franklin Richards who creates his own universes, but he actually like can store them and expand them and send them out with molecules. But in the meantime, he has them smaller than himself. And these universes in this prime state, you technically destroyed a universe, but are you really universal by the normal standardized definition that we ought to be using for consistency state? You see what we're talking about when we're bringing up like sizes.
Another example I use in the original recording is like in Persona 4, there's a dimension called like the TV world, and as you can probably guess, it's literally inside of a TV. Even though it spans across multiple TVs, I don't think like it's still inside of one town. So, and like if you destroy that, you're not universal because that thing definitely is not universe size, even though it is called a universe.
Yeah, and to honestly piggyback off that, he brought this up, and I didn't even consider this, but I agree with it 100%. And so he's talking about like there's beings that are extra dimensional, and people will argue, he is extra dimensional, so he must be like 4D at least. But you can be like extra dimensional, but how would that fit in with somebody who might be within a pocket dimension? Yeah, like how does that work? Like,
in case you don't know, a pocket dimension is a pocket of space inside of an already existing universe. So it would be going off of the time that the other universe would be flowing in. So it's basically in the same timeline, but different because it's a pocket dimension. So if you're extra dimensional inside that pocket dimension, you're only beyond what's inside the pocket dimension, not the universe sub-pocket dimension is inside. If that makes any sense.
And even back to just keeping with sizes, it's like, you have to understand, there's like, in Marvel with like Ant-Man, you have like, what, the microverse or something? It's...
Yeah.
What about a normal human? If that portion of space, a normal human technically could like eat that whole portion of space. Are you gonna argue that they're like above Galactus level power, able to eat a universe now? Like,
that would be like very contradictory, because then like that would just mean like regular human level would also be universal.
Exactly. So what we've talked about is like when you want to actually talk about like defining what it means to be universal. Another thing that really bothers me is like people talking about like the term level, universal level, or their moon level, or planetary level. I grew up with the term buster.
Those are like there's a difference between them.
Yeah.
Like busting would be like destroying it in one attack. Leveling could mean you can destroy it, but it doesn't mean you're doing it in one attack. Like if you use the analogy I use, because I use analogies a lot, is if you destroy a building with a wrecking ball in like 2 hits, just because you use the wrecking ball, that does not make you building level. So, I mean, it does not make you building busting. It makes you building leveling, but not building busting.
Yeah, that's actually all true too, but I'm even thinking like, outside of just like what you can destroy as like leveling, people will use like the level as in like you're on that level. In terms of like, people bring it into hacks. So people will talk about, hey, this person, for example, let's see, we have people like Stradinger from Alucard, who has the ability to essentially, he has omnipresence as his like ability, right? And so people will say that he himself is actually like multiversal. Some people, I've even seen people argue up to outerversal, like he's outerversal level. He's on the level of outerversal level beings. And they're using that level because he's not a outerversal buster. He's not even planetary buster. He's not even close to that, power.
City level.
But they're saying his ability is that level, and they like to use that term, or not even that even necessitates it either. But you have people like Darwin from X-Men, whose power is to essentially adapt to anything that could kill him, to nigh like no limit fallacy degrees. No limit fallacy being a whole other issue, but like
it's like just saying that like an ability has no limits because it has never shown to have a limit.
Yeah. Darwin can adapt to survive anything. Okay, well, within his verse, but you can't actually say that across all mediums he can survive literally anything. That would be.
And while on the topic of adaptation, we have like Aisen's Hogyuku from Bleach. It like will keep on adapting him to whatever situation he's in. But if you like are like outerversal and you like erase Aizen from existence, can you prove the Hogyuku would like adapt him to survive that?
It's very true, yes. And people will say, like, no, it's just never been contradicted, and this is how it's explained, so therefore it's true. It's like, no limit fallacy. It's a fallacy for a reason. You're saying that it is necessarily true, that it is a truth statement, that it will adapt you to anything. Well, the burden of proof is a thing as well. Burden of proof is on you. And to tie this all back, essentially, if you're kind of lost, what we're trying to say here is there's a lot of ways people try to argue people get to universe level, again using the term level, because they want to throw in the term universal with their characters. And there's just so many things that go against it. At the end of the day, if you ever hear me, and Shush, look, you can also throw in your 2 cents here after this, but if you hear me say a character is universal, and it's not in like a highball series, ignore that. I'm talking about like a universe buster, okay? I'm talking about somebody who can have attacks that destroy a universe in one attack. I'm not talking about, oh man, this person is city level because he can destroy buildings in one attack. Just give him enough time, bro. Screw that. That's what if I'm talking about a universal person, I'm talking about universe buster. What's your thoughts on that, man?
I basically agree, but another thing I would like to mention is people like to correlate hacks into attack potency all the time. Like,
true.
This will go later to a different point, because we do discuss like hacks and how they like correlate. But basically, for example, an example of this is Yuha Bach from Bleach. I don't think he would do like PvP planet level because of his feats. If you want to make him planet level, just use Hellverse. But the point is that him like restarting the worlds and remaking them is like a hack, because he's like affecting the balance of all the souls after absorbing the Soul King, which is like the entire purpose of that. Like the entire thing with like him manipulating Ichigo to like kill the Soul King, so he can absorb him and like affect the balance of souls. It's not like him like doing it with his brute power.
Yeah, absolutely true. Like, watch my Kenpachi scaling video, and it's actually covered where it's exactly what he just described. He literally works as like the whole world is like essentially balanced on a fulcrum, and it was all the realms were originally one, and what he's doing is essentially just not doing the job that he took over for what the Soul King was doing. Like, the Soul King's job essentially was like, hey, I am keeping the worlds balanced. And by removing him, he made it the power his own where he could do it, and he just simply wasn't doing that. And the worlds could, based on how everything is shown and described, like, it just was collapsing on its own. Now, he was able to, use his hacks and abilities to, like, conform things, but it was across multiple panels just to create, like, his little castle. Like, you're not getting across, like, let alone I've seen things like multi-universal and everything like that. Where
There's even, like, weird, like, I've even heard people say he's outer-versal for, like, because he was gonna, like, remove death.
Holy crap, yeah. I haven't heard that one yet.
Like, I don't even know why people, like, get this, like, stigma that because you can affect death, you're, like, immediately outer-versal. Like, I don't get where people get that from, but...
Remove the concept of death, outer-versal, Jesus.
I still don't like that word, like, at all, but...
Outer-versal?
Yeah, I hate that word. So complicated.
And...
So, since we did kind of go into hacks, we might as well move on to our next point, which is actually on, hacks and how it is involved in scaling to these terms. Basically, the main issue with hacks is people like to, like... I brought up this example earlier, but I've heard people argue things like Yami from Black Clover, who, like, when, like, all of the possible fights, you could put him in, I guess, someone was like high godly regeneration, because he's got precognition and, like, dimension / durability negation, GG. Like, and, like, if you really want to argue that way, then you might as well just use, like, a Fate character. So, like, they're, like, insanely hacked. Like, if you just want to argue hack solos, just use Fate, not, like, these other series. Like, again, precognition was, like, a big point. Just because you can know something's coming doesn't mean you have, like, the reaction speed to actually dodge it. Which is something we mentioned, like, we brought up in, like, our original discussion, which is on, like, Rock Lee versus Sasuke, like, the start of the Chunin exams.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Rock Lee basically said verbatim, yeah, you know what I'm gonna do. You can see everything I'm doing with, like, your Sharingan, but you don't have the speed to react.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add in, so far I haven't had to say anything here. I actually just agree with everything that's being said. I'm not used to this, just so everybody out there is hearing this, like, I'm not used to agreeing so much with somebody, but I have nothing to add here. This is all just true. If you care about being accurate and consistent, like, this is just true. I mean,
there's, like, this point is, like, probably the shortest one, because it's, like, basically just us saying that, like, unless you can, like, prove a hacks can work on the level of what you're saying it is, then it can't really be used, like, or it's just a no limits fallacy.
Hey,
like,
there we go. Yeah, One Punch Man.
Mainly...
Back in the day, One Punch Man, he could one punch everybody, and then he finally didn't kill somebody in one punch. It's like, oh.
Into more fallacies, like fallacious things, like name fallacies. Like, again, that's mainly going back to the universal thing. If we go into name fallacies, because, like, just because something's called a universe
That too.
Doesn't mean it's universe size. Or like just because he's called One Punch Man doesn't mean he's just gonna like pull up and just one shot all of Marvel and DC. Because like that's his name, but
Especially when these people don't even have the feats. I'm going to destroy the universe, or I'm going to create my own universe when my vision comes true, or ha ha ha, like, and it doesn't even happen.
It's one shot by a bullet.
Like, yeah. Like,
Like if a Rurouni Kenshin character, I love Rurouni Kenshin, but like if one of the characters said, "Yeah, I'm gonna make this entirely different multiverse," and immediately afterwards get one-shotted by an RPG, unless you think that RPG is multiverse level, then I'm not gonna buy that scaling.
But people actually do, and that's what our problem is like people really do. Like they'll take anything they can. I mean, I'm probably preaching to the choir here for anyone who watches this. There's a lot of people who, if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, I get new people. But listen, if you're on my channel, like, I don't want to sugarcoat anything. Like, you don't get to just take a single statement and just ride with it, like ride till you die just because it's your favorite verse.
Yeah, like another thing we were mentioning is like size statements. Like you can't always buy the size of it. I think this might go into our next point on like calc stacking, but I'm not entirely sure. Basically, it mainly goes back to Bleach. Like I love Bleach, right? I got like pizza guys in my profile picture, but like it's just so hard to buy this like standardized scaling. Like before I go more into like the like the universal stuff for Bleach, which I might cover later, but basically there's a statement of Lost Noches taking like 3 days to walk around by what is her name? Nell, I think it was.
Yep, Nell.
And like yeah, Nell. And that's kind of true if you use that panel only. Because in the Vosto Lorde versus Okiora fight, like Okiora makes like this big nuke explosion, and you can still see like Ichigo and Okiora like in the like you can still see them on the panel, even though the explosion towers over Lost Noches, which apparently is like the size of like Tennessee. So as I was saying,
or bigger.
like, unless you think like these like unless you're saying that Ichigo and Okiora are like tall as hell, then there's like no way to really buy it.
Yeah, this even goes into like one of the other points we were talking about is like statements and how people just take them as like just necessarily true. Like what I was just like, she has her statement and it's like, you know, this statement helps me scale them to this power. Ooh, that doesn't, you know, the actual feats or the actual like visuals of it or how the characters interact with these scans around it doesn't fit what that character said. Well, by God,
yeah.
I am going to take what the character said. But at the same time, those same people, if the feat is like, did you see how massive it is? That thing, if a panel like zooms outside of the planet and you can like still see it like on Earth, it's like, that thing's like the size of a, you know, small country now or whatever the case, like, and they'll completely disregard, you know, statements or they'll take whatever works the best for them. I hate that stuff. People do that all the time.
Yeah, there's also like some weird like size scaling. This is like more for like Naruto. Like they're like, yeah, if characters in part 1 of Naruto or FTL, which I don't agree with, takes them 3 days to move between like the like villages, then Naruto planet's like bigger than the sun and has like insane gravity, so all of them are like like busted lifting strength, and like even the children can like beat up like the strongest people on our planet. Like
yeah,
it's like this. It leads to very weird stuff. Like, I've heard some people try to like tie movement speed in their like reaction in combat.
Exactly. People love to try and conform all three, and that's the thing too. Is now to bring it a bit more back into like the universal thing, because that's kind of with like the statements and how people take universal, but that also works with speed all the time. But like, yeah, Naruto has the universal thing too. I mean, it's like I've seen people argue that like the Kamui dimensions actually bring people as high as like 4D. I've actually seen it. Yeah, believe me. But I've also seen people just say that.
Yeah, I've had too.
The what?
Yeah, I have seen that as well. No hate the bullet, but I sent a video to Zale and like a DMs about it, And like I was gonna like just discuss like the problems I had, but like I didn't really think I had the time. This isn't like discussing like how you scale, like I mean how you should scale if you don't already scale like this. I might as well cover it like lightly. He does use Road to Ninja, which I don't think is canon. It's canon to the anime, which I don't think is canon to the manga. And I use the manga, so I'm not even gonna touch that. Um, Basically his issue is he says that Momoshiki makes his parallel dimensions. But again, as we mentioned already, parallel does not mean infinite in size. And then there's the Kaguya busting her dimensions. And then, like, I'm pretty sure his counter argument to that, of her using the Shinobi chakra, that well, that was all her chakra anyway, originally. And she says she can't be Momoshiki and Kenshiki. So they would scale up the ETSP.
That's so much worse, anyways. it's like
well, like again, like that would be referring to her planet on Earth or her dimensions. She wouldn't use it in her dimensions because Momoshiki and Kenshiki can travel out of them, and she won't use it on Earth because she doesn't want to destroy Earth because that's like her like precious nursery or whatever she called it.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's even worse. This is also just a huge DC feat over AP. Like you have to understand, like this is.
Hacks.
It's that too because it has the TSB properties of like hitting molecules or whatever. But like,
yeah,
even worse than that, it's like she's not one shot. Let's just say it is the size of a full universe. That doesn't necessitate that it's actually even reaching anywhere close to that in potency to try and scale anywhere from that. Like this is
argue that like that thing is like universe size is basically arguing Sasuke Susanoo is like multi-galaxy size because even though it's small, you can still see it compared to the ETSB when Kaguya used it in their fight. So,
well, even if you just say that it gets to universal once it's fully expanded, the thing is that's exactly the point. Is that it's requiring it to expand. Yeah, this is literally calling a building buster a city buster if you just give them enough time. Like you can, even if you wanted to say it was in fact guaranteed so to be universal in size, that she's a universe buster, if you just give her enough time and let this giant Hax ball, consume it eventually. I mean, are you really saying that she's I guess you were gonna argue she's universe level then, because that probably sounds cooler to people who really love the series. It's like, that's exactly where I would draw the line. It's like, she's not a universe buster, her AP comes nowhere close. You're just muddying the waters because it sounds better for the series.
Yeah. And another thing, like Kagoromo, or whatever, is like creation of all things. Like it's the data books, which I do not like at all. But that's like it's completely different. That's a completely different topic. I don't want to get too off basis here.
Yeah.
Like, even if we use that statement to like full value, say all of Naruto statements are correct, which I find funny because like usually like Naruto like fans like take Bleach statements and say nah, you can't use them, they're hyperbole. Then they use data book statements, but again that's getting a bit off topic. Like even if we say creation of all things, it's control of the universe, that's like again a hacks, like not an AP thing. So
exactly. Oh my gosh. So here's something I didn't even put as a bullet point, but Jesus. Okay. Creation does not equate destruction. They are not the same thing.
I agree.
You can argue it, but you can't prove it unless you have a feat to suggest that it is necessarily true. Okay, like, this thing murders.
The worst argument for creation, or especially in Momoshiki's case, is, that, he creates his universe, which there's no confirmation that's his universe, by the way. Like, there could be some other Otsutsuki that made it, and he's universal, but we just haven't seen them yet.
Yep.
But, okay, even if we go into the basis, Momoshiki did make that dimension with the nebula, which we cannot prove. Exactly. And they're like, he still exerted energy doing it, and Naruto still damaged him, and since he's exerting energy, that's a durability thing, and Naruto damaged him, so it scales. When you, Newton's third law, which is what I'm assuming, is force. Every force has an equal and opposite reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no force because you're not destroying anything. You're not outputting any damage. You're just outputting energy. Like a microwave does not have like. What's an example I could like? Like a microwave or like a microwave will not output like you get your hand burned by the microwave. Like the microwave would not scale to you in durability, because then you could just break the microwave by like ripping it off the counter and just like throwing it on the ground. Like it doesn't make any sense.
So, sadly, I'm maybe not as good in terms of coming up with like analogies here, but the reason why people take creation to be equal to like destruction is, oh, it takes energy to create, and that same energy they can put into destruction. And it's like,
somehow
that's like, okay, that's your 2-year-old level, like assumption that you can say you want to be true, but nothing requires it to be true, because it could be the case, but you can't just say it is the case that they can take energy where the same energy used to create and put that into an attack that of equal level. You can't even say, okay, for example, if let's say just because we were on Naruto a second ago, Naruto uses his strongest big ball Rasen Shuriken that he can. He puts Biju Bomb Mega Explosion. He puts all the chakra that he can. Is he actually out of chakra now? Because exactly, you see him actually use like his strongest techniques. If he needs to hit harder, and you can say he can just put more energy into it, then why doesn't he? Let me put it this way. Let's say Naruto has a energy value of 100, and let's say when he puts out his biggest attacks, if he could just put all 100 units of energy that Naruto has into his attack, into like a Biju Bomb to make it as powerful as possible, why doesn't he do so? Because what he does instead is he goes, here's my big, giant, massive explosion attack. Oh, I still have tons of energy within me to keep doing it even. He can spam it out there. Why isn't his potency scaling up to the amount of energy he has? Has anybody ever thought of that?
Like, look at the pain art, for example. Like, Kakashi actually uses all his chakra, and then he just, like, fucking dies. Like, there's, like, not been a single moment, besides that one in specific, where somebody's actually used all their chakra. Like, even when, like, Nagato uses the planetary devastation, he doesn't use all his chakra, because immediately after, he uses Grenade Rebirth.
Yeah, Naruto ran himself out of chakra and then had the Nine Tails still fuel him with chakra for him. And that took like hours and hours.
Like KCM1. Like, he's just like using his chakra, but it's being like amped by the Nine Tails. Like,
and that's the thing, is it took him like hours and hours to do so. Like, nobody can put this into a single attack. So even then, like, that just simply doesn't work. And additionally, just innately, creation, there's people who can create things on levels that they just simply haven't shown to be able to destroy. Again, I'll bring up like Franklin Richards, who he's been able to create universes, and you could say that he can, with his powers, with reality warping, he can hacks-wise, like, completely, he can like manipulate the universe, he can make it go away with that, but he's not making a universe destruction attack. You might have people who can destroy universe with an attack, and maybe he can, like, turn it to flowers. I don't think the one person was actually universe level, but I'm just giving you an idea here. But, like, he is not throwing out universal AP. You don't take an attack by Franklin Richards and require universal level, like, universal amount of durability. So it's like, it doesn't necessarily, like, it doesn't have to be the case that because you can create X, you can destroy X. That is such kindergarten level, like, logic.
Yeah, that's like the logic that they'd be using. Like, also, the word isekai and sekai are both thrown around a bit too much, in my opinion. Like, isekai, again, means parallel world under the context of science fiction. Like, there's an entire genre
yes.
of anime on the isekai, and I don't think you're gonna tell me Kirito is universal because he can leave the isekai he was in and go back. But like no one's gonna say that. Like I've heard actual arguments for Kirito being that strong.
I was gonna say you
but
will
that would
find
be
people
like a dumb argument.
So if you guys can't tell, the frustration is very mutual here. So I think we're gonna talk about the last probably point here. It's probably getting to be long enough of a video here, potentially. But here's the last thing is, oh, actually, first, no, this needs to be addressed. I don't care if I have to edit this part in. Look, all right. So the point on Bullet's video, you were talking about what is or isn't canon. I want to make it very clear. Canon is so much more than what people try to break it down into. They just want it like black and white. Oh, the author looked at this and he didn't say no, so it's canon now. Okay, canon is actually, there's canon and non-canon. That's what people generally say. But when people are talking about non-canon, they mean it is not canon to the main canon. Main canon is not a term usually used, but that's actually what it is linguistically being referred to when you say non-canon. It's not canon to what? The main canon. And the reason there's a main canon is because you have, look, a video game is non-canon to the main canon, but a video game
usually
has, correct, true. I think DBZ has something going on with that. But like a video game is canon to itself. Video games can come in like 1, 2, and 3, and that video game has its own canon that can be totally separate from everything else, and it is a true authentic canon to itself. Where now maybe the manga is non-canon to that video game, right? But the video game will never be the main canon. This is true for anime, manga, web series, novels, whatever you want to talk about. There is a main canon, and then other things can be, but aren't necessarily so, canon to the main canon. When you talk about
another thing I want to mention is there are some novels that are canon.
Correct.
In Naruto specifically. Kakashi's novel's canon. The one where Naruto dodges photons on a bicycle. Yeah, that happened is canon. I still cannot believe that actually happened. But the Boruto one specifically, with Momoshiki, is not canon, because it's completely different than the manga and anime versions, which are also differently canon. So there's 3 different versions of events. You cannot use them together at all 3 at the same time, which I've actually seen people do. Like I've seen people be like, yeah, in the and also there's in the movie as well. So that's actually 4 different versions.
No.
And people are like, well, in the anime, Momoshiki said he can make an attack up to infinity, and in the manga he blocked Momoshiki's strongest attack. But like that's like 2 different canons, and it's so weird.
And the last part,
I remember in the novel specifically, Momoshiki absorbs Konohamaru's Rasengan and then uses it later. But then like in everything but the novel, Konohamaru does nothing in that event.
Mm-hmm.
He's not even there. So unless you're thinking they're all the same event but like different things happen, which is actually not true. But it's just so weird because you can't really prove one thing is canon. You cannot use one canon timeline and then use feats from a completely different canon.
Yeah, that's why generally people talk about like a main canon without even knowing that that's what they're referring to. And the last thing I want to hit on that canon part, because since somebody else's video or other person is being brought up, I want to be very clear with what I talk about here. The other huge problem with things being canon or not is that then you have to wholly argue the whole point of what is or isn't an outlier. Outliers absolutely exist. And the thing is what you need to consider an outlier needs to count in terms of, think of it like a graph. You have all these feats, all this scaling in terms of a generalized level of power. They've only destroyed things at building level this whole time. Oh, in the middle they destroy like a mountain. Okay, but then for the rest there's like building level, and then maybe at the very end they get to city level. You don't count that mountain level feat. It just doesn't work for the actual scaling. It is an outlier. But it can work in reverse as well. Like somebody who destroys mountains all the time and then he struggles to destroy a building one time or something. Like that's also an outlier. And the thing is you consider the outliers against the main canon. Now the reason why this matters is because Naruto has, like, in some of these novels, you have, like, some crazy feats, but Outliers would suggest that they are completely against what is shown in the actual main canon. But, in the same way...
Like, chakraless Naruto, like, dodges photons on a bicycle, and then, like, Haku is apparently only light speed, like, blitzing, like, Sharingan Kakashi from, like, 100 miles away. And intercepting its fastest attack. And unless you're telling me chakraless Naruto is faster than Haku, I don't...
Even more than that, it's literally you have... Okay, so it's... You also have it in the reverse. I always see people say, like, but that's an outlier. When they talk about, I think it was Kenshiki, like, running away from the 5, like, new Kage. And it's like...
Yeah.
I can see why you would say that's an outlier. Why it doesn't really make much sense that this guy is supposed to, lore-wise, scale to, like, above Kage. Imagine Kage running away from these 5 Kages. The whole thing is, like, people argue that as, like, an outlier, and I would agree. That just, in scaling, makes no sense. But the thing is like, when you're scaling all this Boruto stuff, you have to understand, all this scaling... They're taking it from Naruto, the main canon, because I'll tell you now, Boruto has almost... Hey, here's me taking this is just a magma hot take right now. Boruto has almost no good feats. Actual, like, on-panel good feats to, like, show for it. Like, all of its scaling is like, here's how strong Naruto is, they're said to be stronger. I mean, he's older now, so he's got to be stronger, right? Stuff like that, because there is nothing even close to what Teen Naruto was showing, like, back in the day.
I do agree with him that adult Naruto is stronger, but you can't really, like, base that off of any feats. You just gotta go, like,
with scaling. That's exactly, but that's my point. You're pulling from the main canon, and when we're talking about outliers, that's exactly my point. Yes.
Another thing I, like, want to, like, bring up is, like, so the 5 Kage and Boruto, like, despite the fact that there's literally nothing to suggest they got any stronger, are capable of, like, boxing, like, Otsutsuki, which is just, like, proves, like, a huge inconsistency. And if you want to go even further, people are on Comic Vine, and also, like, Reddit scaling forums, which exist for some reason, are saying, like, well, Sensei's only mountain level, because he said that, like, Yusuke's spirit gun killed him, and that didn't even destroy a mountain. So saying he's mountain level is like being like wank. And then they're gonna turn around and say Naruto solos, when in the fight against Delta, he dodges her like laser destruction beam thingy,
yes.
and it destroys a tree, like a few trees, and he's like, that's dangerous. Like, I'm not gonna say Naruto's tree level because he said something was dangerous when it only destroys like trees.
Exactly. Like, that's exactly what the DC versus AP. Quite obviously, the AP is so vastly above the just simple amount that's being destroyed. Like a bullet.
If you use that logic, then it's like Naruto's like in tree level, dude. Like.
I know. Yeah. Like I've always talked about like a sword versus like a bullet. Let me just grab you like stretch out something of like a cloth or. Thin cloth or something. Like, I can cut through it. For people who've seen Forged in Fire, or has seen my channel before, I've used this a bunch of times. Like, you can cut through, like, a bunch of cloth and just take out a whole swath. You can cut, like, a pig in half and such, But, like, a bullet's gonna do so much less damage. The bullet is way more potent. So, yeah,
you got a higher chance of surviving from a... Like, I've heard people try to say a sword's more potent, you have a higher chance of surviving a gun wound than you do from a sword. But that's because the sword does like way more like damage to you. Like,
correct. Well, but that's because your durability isn't going to be higher than the sword. If your durability was such that a sword couldn't cut you, a bullet would probably still penetrate you because it's more potent. it has more energy per square centimeter, for example, like, or centimeter cubed. Like, for each amount of space, the bullet carries more force, is essentially what I mean by potent, for those who might be confused. But
yeah, like again, like the main thing is like we can also bring up how like there are some like bombs that output like more force than other bombs, but the damage they do to like the surrounding area is like way less because they're like more compact to not do that. But you're not gonna say the weaker bomb is actually stronger because it does more damage.
yeah,
Like, all around.
there's bombs that can expand further and destroy more, and be vastly weaker in potency than a bomb that was more confined.
Like a nuclear bomb, for example. Like a nuclear bomb, enough of them can destroy a planet over time, but you're not gonna say that nuclear bomb planet level or planet busting. Like again, like that goes back into our level versus busting term. That was an example I should have brought up there. So like a bomb can destroy a planet if it's nuclear, but it's not gonna always do it 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm. And so now I think I definitely want to bring up the last point, and that is calc stacking and how much I hate it. Also how it ties into universal plus people with how people take it, but also with how much I hate it. So calc stacking is a fun little thing where you take a calculation, you're like, this person reaches into like Mach 100 or something like that. You can even go low. You know, I'm going to go lower really to exemplify just how bad calc stacking gets. They move 100 miles an hour. And what happens is, then somebody goes, he moved 100 miles an hour from this calc, and he got this many times more powerful. Okay, so now we know he can move this much faster. Okay. Well, we have this new calc from this person saying that he outran that person by like 100-fold. So he is now going to take not only the old calc using that, I'm going to use the old calc and the scaling on top of this new calc to get this total crazy BS number, even though all you need to actually find out, if we're talking about speed here, is speed equals distance divided by time. You don't get to take all that old calc and all that scaling if he only covered the distance of a room in a set amount of time. Like, that is his speed. Speed is verbatim distance divided by time. You now have a new calc. That's what you have.
Yeah.
Calc stacking is gross. You can get somebody 100 miles an hour and get them to faster than light in a heartbeat. It takes no effort, and it's just wrong. It's just wrong.
Like, as I mentioned earlier, I've seen people like get like use a calc of Luffy being 13 times faster than light, and they get them to 12 million times faster.
Yeah, I believe it.
All the things that like that doesn't even amplify speed. Like the gears don't amplify speed as much as they do strength. Cause like what was his name? Like Gucci or whatever. Forgot his first name. Like in his like cat form or whatever. Keep up with base Luffy, and even after Luffy opened the second gear, he could still keep up with him, implying that there's like he doesn't blitz him or anything.
Yeah.
Which implies there's barely any increase in speed, but yeah, he still uses that strength increase.
Yeah, and it
gross.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, he obviously like in Gear 2, he obviously gets faster, but not by like you're not arguing like he's getting just disgusting amounts. But even if you were to say that he does, just because we're talking concepts here, say he does get a lot faster there, you don't then get to extrapolate that to Gear 3, Gear 4, stuff like that, and say he gets just as much faster there. It's like how people
you can't even prove that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that where people will take alternate forms. Kind of like a sort of another problem. And it's even shown in sort of things like, again, we've already covered like statements and how people take them and, buster term versus level and all that stuff. But even with calc stacking, it even happens with Bleach where you're talking about, my Shikai, that's like a 5 to 10 times boost. My Bankai, that's another 5 to 10 times. It's like, well, is it 5? Is it 10? Can it be lower? Or are you talking about in general terms? Was this hyperbolic? It could be stronger. Maybe Ichigo gets 100 times. How do you... Well, let's,
I also forgot to mention, 5 to 10 could mean any numbers between them. It doesn't have to mean 5 or 10. It could mean any of them.
And is it even... Can we actually prove, for those who pretend it is, or like say that it has to be the case, can you say that it actually is a verbatim, like, 5, let's say it's a 10 times increase. 10 times increase to what? Speed? Reaction speed? Like, combat speed? Durability?
Like, more referring to, like, how strong Ichigo's, like, gets a good Tencho would be. Because, like, uses it, and then Yudoichi's like, yeah, if you use Bonkai, it'd be 5 to 10 times stronger. But your Bonkai might be special.
Yeah.
Or something. I forgot, like, the exact wording, but that was, like, around that.
The main thing is, like, you can't just extrapolate, oh, every stat across every power-up.
Yeah.
And then use that for, like, calc stacking on top of that. And that is also how you get a lot of, like, oh, he's universal level. So, that's a lot of pet peeves, honestly, and a lot of things. Again, this has kind of been like a, hey man, this kind of really sucks. Or he came to me and was like, this is something I want to talk about because this really annoys me. Like, what do you think of this? And it's like, nah, you're right. Yeah, that annoys me too.
Yeah.
And
it's just us agreeing, but then, like, giving our, like, different takes on it. But, like, it's, like, the same point.
But I hope you guys really understand, because, like, this is something that really, and I am glad, of course, while, again, I'm not used to so much agreement, it is nice to know that there's people who don't just take what I consider so much highballing, or just take things as necessarily, like, it must be the case, because it's stated, or things like that, and actually put in some, like, forethought of, like, is it most accurate and consistent to be the case? And people just, it's nice knowing somebody else is triggered by all this stuff just as much as me, that it just bothers them, because it's like, it's just intellectually dishonest. You know, here's the thing, here's something I'm kind of gonna end the video on, is scaling properly based on actual feats, visuals, and character interactions within those feats and interactions is what I say we ought to aim for if we value accuracy. And look, like, when people scale things purely on statements, meaning there's no feats and no scaling to go off of, like, it's just a statement, like what we just covered, like, it's universal because it's stated, let alone, that's just baseline, because then again, we've also covered how it might actually say it is universal, but even if you say, therefore it is, even that doesn't necessitate that the universe is actually the size of a full, like our universe or something. We've already covered all that, so I'm just saying here. When people scale things purely on statements, let alone everything else we've just covered, it's honestly, it's just simply laziness, because that's very easy to scale with. It states this, so that's how powerful they are. Come check out how strong I think this character is. It's like, I guess, I mean, you did read the line. But even if there is nothing else to go off of, you can generally try to cross-scale it to something else. And I mean, if there is absolutely nothing that you can actually scale it against other than just that statement, here's my big thing, and I've said this so many times. You can't simultaneously say that you want to be as accurate and consistent as possible and take statements as simply and necessarily true. Like, just in of themselves.
Yeah.
It's impossible to, actually hold both positions. And this is the thing, is like, all this stuff gets mixed up. People really reach, like, this person's universal because let me throw out this bullcrap BS reason. And that was our video today. I mean,
yeah, basically, again, just us agreeing, but, like, we're just, like, explaining how we perceive it.
Yeah, I want to be clear. Oh yeah, this is something else he brought up. It's like, so he was like, I haven't seen you actually give, like, what your full, like, thoughts are on it, what it means for a character to be universal. I only, like, barely touched on it, but I was kind of vague with it on the highball. I did try to define it so that, it's like, when we're talking about multi-universal, here's what I mean, but that's as far as I went. And I've always had all these problems, that everything we've just talked about, but I've never actually explained it. So, it feels good knowing at least there's another person, like, through a full conversation. It's like, yeah, like, it is out there, we've seen it, and it is just totally, it's complete cancer.
I actually suggested this before on your channel, but maybe you should make it like a Discord server at one point.
Yeah, I would love to do a Discord. I think it'd be great. My only problem is just, as I've said before many times, it's like I just want to make sure that I actually have enough time to actually commit to it. I don't want to have a Discord server where I'm just kind of there, just lingering around. I want to really be like there for the community, the people who follow me, be able to talk to the people. A lot of the people I feel like I've gotten decently close with. You know, there's several who actually know my Discord already, and they can message me pretty much whenever, and I always tell them, yeah, I'm ready. You know, I'll message back, have full conversations, as long as I'm not really busy, of course. But I am getting closer and closer to where I feel I could actually make the Discord, so I am really excited for that, man. It's just, that's something that I have to wrestle with, and once I am actually ready and I have enough time, then that's absolutely on my bucket list, and I will let everybody know. I'm really excited for that, so that should be something coming up, and that should be really cool. But, I mean, all that said, yeah, that's gonna be the video, and yeah, for those listening who made it this far, yeah, call back to some of the videos I've been doing. Oh my gosh, these long videos. Like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you guys think, and ciao.
Pastor.